Welcome again to Grasshopper for Rhino. The ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. We're deep into sets and sets of sets, and we're going into sets lists dealing with text from characters all the way through the text distance. I did want to backtrack a little bit at the end of the sets of sets that I got into the content of what you can do with the item index, which pushes us back into the sequences. But sets of sets deals with these sort list keys, which are essential. So try and understand this. I've broken it down into two things. Cut it down the middle. Think of this series, which is a series of 4 to 13, because I've started the series at start step count. Defaults to 10 step by 1. So we go from 4 to 13. It then says, okay, here's your full set of everything within it, 4 to 13, but I've actually added a second set to it that starts at that has another count. But then anything that doubles up, that creates set will only find distinct elements. So it adds a few more to it, 11 through 13, and then it repeats pushing these other items to the end because they're in the other set. So basically, we are looking for 4 through 13 because that's what I want. I want these numbers 4 through 13 within this set, which occur at the indices 0 to 9. So 4 through 13 appears in this set from indices 0 through 9. Same thing if we look down here and I take that full set out, which was without creating the set, getting rid of distinct parts. We have a set from 0 to 11 coming out of here and saying, okay, where is 0 to 11 in this set? And what are the indices? Well, 0 through 11 occurs at indices 10 through 20 through 21. So that's how you get data from the indices and swapping them out. So a very cool tool. And it's not a members indice. It's something totally different. That said, I hope that makes sense because we're not going to stop and skip a beat. We're actually going to go into here and we're going to put this on a cautionary yellow as we try and make a transition. See if we can get through this. I somehow doubt we can, but we can try. We are going hard into text characters through text distance, and we're 2 minutes in. So here we go. That said, let's zoom on in. We have begun with a sequence of characters, which comes out as A through J, at a character pool from A to Z, but I have a count of 10 defaulting, so it's only taking A through J. And I'm taking a look at text and seeing what happens. Very interesting that it records whatever's in that sequence, puts it into a grafted list, and puts every item onto its own branch. That said, Unicode's pretty cool because it tells you what the computer thinks of in kind of a human way each of these letters of the alphabet. So if you hadn't thought in Unicode, it's kind of fun for my boys. And if everybody's wondered why I've done the intro to this, I do have 2 young boys that are 8 and 10, and kind of as punishment, I make them sit and watch their dad online and learn Grasshopper procedural, parametric modeling, which should knock them out of their procedural modeling with their CAD programs. They should be pretty good because they spend a lot of time on Scratch, which is an interesting program coming out of MIT. Concatenates exactly that. It takes this sequence and it takes the second sequence, which happens to be the same one, and brings them both together on one line and flattens that information. So concatenating brings 2 things together. If I change the sequence and started it or did a different count or formatted it differently, it definitely would do different things. Text join is pretty interesting because you can take your text and you get to join it with whatever you stick between it. And I decided to stick some comments between it. And then I checked out my text length, which counts every single thing in it, and you'll notice there's 19 items as I go A, B, C, D, E, all the way through. 10 letters and 9 commas. So let's see if we can plug through this. Split text, double click to edit panel content. I've started to get pretty lazy. Basically, that will have the separator of whatever you separate it by. If I separated it by the letter B, it would have only separated right here under de and le. Click to edit, but you can see that I chose nothing, or space, I should say. I had to type in space. I should say that. There's a space here, not nothing. It'd be totally different if I did that. So then it'll split and put into a flattened image. All of these. You could then end up grafting those, but we're not going to get into that until we get into sets. This is where I start to lose it under the format tool. It's the only one that really kind of throws me. I've been playing around a little bit with it, but when it gets into cultures and exporting them and then looking into the linguistic families and I start going all around the globe to find out, I figure we're getting into some pretty cool formatted stuff. And being a little bit of a Canadian at birth, obviously I know my accent I use in my circumflexes and things like that, but I actually don't want to even go there because I don't know how that's going to inform my geometry when I want to make sculptures or buildings in my backyard. Maybe one day I'll wrap my head around it. I'll leave it in red for those that want to know a little more about formatting and certainly the culture. Big question mark as to what to do with it. This is nice because upper and lowercase, pulling a text in, like I said, I'm defaulting to what comes up in the panel, which is a nice generated text, so why not use it? And then pull the cap locks and the and lowercase from that. Also, this is good preparation for anybody wanting to get into coding or a little bit more scripting when it comes to Python. It would come in handy, definitely. I find they use a lot more text in there and a lot less numbers. That kind of threw me when I first got into coding. I thought it would be more number-based, which I guess it is, depending on your preference. Text fragments, pretty cool. You can fragment it up. So I've grabbed that, and I've just chosen to select the first 6 letters, which is double, and I've chose to actually start the count at 3, so I skip de, and I start with b, and then the space counts as a thing, and so 6, 7, 8 is going to click through it, and even as I get to the end of that, 10, you're going to think 10, 9, and 10 look the same, but that's because 10 includes the space after click. If that's not making sense, just take your time on the file, push around. I put a lot of spaces at the beginning and end, and text trim does exactly that. It takes your wherever you want to start writing. It doesn't really matter because it just takes a start and end from whatever's in that content and cuts out all the spaces that you put at the front and end of it. You can see I put on a lot as I leave that file, and sorry, I should probably click on it again. You can see how many spaces I typed in there, just so I could eliminate it. Now I just went on to match data. I took SAS, AS, 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 and I said, does that pattern match this pattern? And obviously it doesn't. How did this end up working? Text parameter for matching, case, scenario. Let me just take a look again because I've never used it. Match the text against a pattern. So I'm basically trying to find out if this pattern is matched exactly into it. If I took that pattern, I'm sure it would go to true. And I think if I take as, and I take as, well, then I'm going to have a true pattern. But as long as I have that, it's coming up false. So I still have yet to figure out matching text. Replacing text, it'll grab this. And what I did was just use QWERT, because I like QWERTY on. I probably should have typed in QWERTY, which reminds me of my early typing days. It takes QWERTY and puts it and finds what you want to replace. So I want to take double click out, find that, and I want to replace it with QWERTY and to edit panel content. Be careful with your spaces, that can be tricky. Let's keep going. This is an interesting sort, and this comes in a little close to what we were doing on the last one. And I brought in some information which was grafted. All I did was graft the panel, double click to edit panel content. And what I did was brought that as keys and as values. And I can say the items are these items containing 6 objects and locate where they are. And because the keys go out of order, which you'll find dealing with dictionaries in Python, that's where I first encountered it. The order doesn't matter, but then the values will pull it right back into order because it'll tell you that where in the index these things should end up being. So if I take a look here and I say, okay, double 2, then 2 is going to be located at 0, and that's exactly where it is, double. So you got to kind of play through those again and see how they match values with keys. And it's really the way of thinking of a dictionary, a definition followed by what that definition means. Double click is something I put in there, and then basically text distance. Distance is how far off that is from the other one. So if we've got 5 letters in click and 1 space between it, it's going to say your distance and difference. I would say text difference would be 6. And if I change this to something less so, like double, it's going to be 7 because then there's 7 things different in it. And maybe I'll just leave that as E because it made sense to me when I looked at it after a few days. All right, so text distance is there, and I think we actually made it through. Oh my gosh, in 9 minutes. Things are going to slow down. Really, I'm going back to Mode Labs. I'm going to take a break as I try and finish up the tree data and get through these, but I think I'm going to have to pull exact examples from intermediate and make reference in these files for you to go watch more in-depth, longer videos to learn the process. I'll try and highlight them and make some scripts. I don't know how much I can explain them besides just give you a copy on LinkedIn, on GitHub of what I use to understand files. We will probably start with, and let's just take this one just for the sake that I feel like I kind of got through it. Oops. Let's bring it back to blue. And this is where I'm going to go, and I'm going to pull in my clean tree. I'm going to do my graft and my flatten. And after that, you're going to find I'm starting to use a lot more panels and param viewers to understand what I am doing as I move through prune tree all the way lovingly through all of these incredible tools for getting at data paths. This one blew me away when I got into it to find out the format of how to fill that out. But I've got to go on to higher learning in order to understand and share these with you. Hopefully we can make it through that somehow. And in the process of doing that, I'm going to do a real interface on all the elements you can find on every single thing within this Grasshopper window. There's some really cool things for pulling in files, and the canvas actually pulls back from the screen, and you can import files into it. I'll even cover not my plugin, all the plugins, obviously, but I'm going to pull in a couple of small plugins that I use quite frequently. And this draw tool is something worth even spending some time with as well. And all the profilers, I think that would be great to take a look at as well. Anyway, actually, they're not called profiles, or they're called canvas widgets, so we can end up getting into that from Compass through Profiler into message balloons. So a lot said, a lot to do. This file is going to be huge by the time I'm done it, and I'm borrowing data as I go through it. There's a couple of red flags, but I'm trying to do the best job I can to keep students plugging away that feel math and logic is a good replacement for the pen on paper as opposed to mouse and keyboard. So here's the future. Keep going. Keep plugging away.